Hello everyone and welcome to this lesson on building a blog website with Gatsby. My name is Yihua and I'm one of the instructors alongside Andre that teaches the React course from zero to mastery. Now in this lesson, I am going to talk about Gatsby and how we can leverage Gatsby in order to build a blog website. Now before we continue, I do want to note that this lesson assumes that you know the basics of React and GraphQL. We also make the assumption that you understand some of the caveats behind some of the libraries in the React ecosystem, such as React Router. If you are unfamiliar with this, we do teach this in the course. Otherwise, you may have to become more familiar with these concepts before proceeding with this lesson. You can definitely watch this lesson still, but you might not be able to understand all of the code that we'll end up writing inside of this section. Now, if that is not a problem for you, then let's take a deep dive into what Gatsby is in the first place. So as I mentioned, Gatsby is a framework that is written in React. It's a framework that has already combined together some of the best React ecosystem libraries into one bundle and as an opinionated way about how you should use it in order to build a static website. In order for us to actually understand when we should use something like Gatsby, we have to understand some of the competing technologies that you've definitely at least used or heard about. So let's take a look at this image. Let us go over one high-level concept in React. So we know that React is a front-end based UI rendering library. We write React code, which is a combination of JavaScript and JSX, in order for us to compile that code that we've written in React down into JS, CSS, and HTML using a loader like Webpack as well as a transpiler like Babel. Now, those files are the files that any web page that our browser loads consumes in order to build such a web page. So when we build our websites in React, we might be writing React code, but there is some compile step along the way that builds them into JavaScript, CSS, and HTML files that our browser is able to consume. Now keeping this in mind, let's take a breakdown of 3 technologies that we see in the React ecosystem that try and solve the problem of how you develop React applications. Now those are Gatsby, Create React App, and Next.js. Now you've definitely heard of Create React App and you've definitely used it if you've taken this course. Create React App is a very quick way for you to start up a React application, and it leverages what is called client-side rendering. Now what client-side rendering means is that it leverages the browser in order to build out the HTML that gets served whenever a user navigates to any page on your React application. So if you were to see this browser here, when the user navigates to the home route and then loads up the home component, what happens is that the React code that we've written is built and passed to that user's browser engine. Now that engine will end up being the one that actually generates the HTML required for that homepage and then loads it up onto the browser. The same thing happens whenever they navigate to any other route, such as collections. But the main idea here is that the browser engine is the thing that is generating the HTML pages that the browser needs to load related to our React application. Everything is rendered on the client side, so on the browser. Now, Create React App is a great tool when you want to build a really dynamic website in React, but you don't have a lot of static images that come by default with the actual application, or a lot of really deeply nested and really complex logic that ends up building your pages. Now, when you do have a website that is performing slowly and can exceed the amount of power that our browser engine has, then you want to use something like Next.js. Now, if you've never heard of Next.js, it is a framework that allows you to write React and leverage server-side rendering. Server-side rendering is almost the exact same conceptually as client-side rendering, except instead of letting the client or the browser's engine be the actual thing that ends up compiling and generating the HTML code for our browser routes whenever our users navigate to any of our pages, we let the backend server build and generate the HTML files that the user needs in order to view the home route, the collections route, or any route for that matter. So whenever the user navigates to another route, for example, like our home, then this will communicate to our backend server that they need the HTML related to home. So the server will start to generate using our React code the actual HTML required. And this is way more robust because our backend server is more powerful and it's capable of generating it really quickly compared to our browser. So you want to use Next.js when you need to build a really robust and large website that might end up having really complex logic to build out your views. Now, the main thing here to remember though is that Next.js and Create React App are both dynamically generated, meaning that we directly generate the HTML whenever the browser navigates to different routes. So this is all live generated, whereas something like Gatsby is what's called a static generated website. So what this means is that all of the code that builds to the HTML pages that end up comprising our application is all done at the build step. So similar to when we run build with Create React App, when we push our Gatsby code up to a server or up to a hosting platform of some kind, they will run the build script, which will automatically generate all of the static HTML that our browsers end up using in order to display the views, which means that none of this code is generated dynamically. It's all generated way ahead of time when you push your code up onto your server. So this is the main difference with Gatsby. So it's really good when you want to build static websites that generally don't need to dynamically change the views that often. By doing so, this is actually exactly what we need for a blog website where much of the actual content is already predetermined. It's already written. So all we want to do is just display a bunch of blog posts and navigate between them. And Gatsby is the perfect solution for that. So in the next lesson, I'm going to teach you how we can get started with Gatsby. So I'll see you in the next lesson.